All right, we are live. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I have a co-host. Her name is Rachel Wilson. You probably know her as Based Homeschool Mom. And this is a new series I'm doing on this channel, live streams with a surprise co-host each week. It won't be the same interview style that you're used to with my Devotional Heart series. It's going to be just chill stream, hang out, ask each other questions, get to know each other, and then you guys can ask us questions too. So please use the chat. And can everybody hear us? Please let us know. And Rachel, how are you today?
I am doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I've been looking forward to this. And last week you weren't feeling well. We had to postpone, and I hope you're doing a lot better today.
I'm A-okay today. About once a month, I get a migraine, and I never know when it's coming, and it always seems to come at the worst possible moment. So sorry about that, but I'm all set today.
And so like I said, each week, you guys, I'm going to have a different guest, but maybe Rachel will be a returning guest. If you like her, please let her know and ask her to please return to my show. And I do know that next week I have a guest lined up, Amy the artist. You've seen her on my channel, and she's a good friend of mine. And so she's agreed to come back next week. And then the week after that, I don't have anybody lined up. So if there's somebody you guys want me to bring back, just let me know in the comments. And so, Rachel, we're going to be talking about relationships, marriage, parenting. I'm not a parent, but I do want to ask you some questions about what it's like to be a homeschool mom. And, but we'll just, these comments are so sweet. So we'll just start with, first, actually, we're going to start with your book because I do want to promote this book, and I think everybody has.
She got the J. Dyer sticky notes in it and everything, you guys. That's awesome.
I am not finished with it yet, but so far it is amazing, Rachel. You've done so much research. So
Thanks.
everybody, can you guys see this? And maybe one of my amazing mods can put a link. I forget, you want people to buy it on Amazon or directly
You
from
guys can do Amazon if you don't want to give money to the Beast system. I totally understand. So you can just message me on social media, and I'll do like a PayPal or something and send you a signed copy if you'd prefer to do that. So that's an option too. Otherwise, just Amazon.
I just want to remind everybody to, if you haven't yet, please watch the interview on Church of the Eternal Logos that Rachel did with Patrick. They go into super detail about this topic. And so I'll put the link in the description later, but if one of my mods can get the link for that now, that would be awesome. And we're not going to go too deep today into the topic of this book, but I do think it's going to tie in with what we're going to be talking about. Because feminism, the toxic effects of feminism, as I've mentioned in my own streams, in my own videos a few times, is that it has really affected even my own marriage without my awareness. When you're a feminist, which I would never have called myself a feminist, but I was in the New Age, and when you're in the New Age, you're liberal about everything. So feminism was a good word, right? It's a good thing.
Of course.
Like, we need feminism, right?
Right.
And then to later realize that I was programmed and conditioned, and then to become a Christian and learn the roles that man and women, the wife and the husband, have different roles, separate roles. We don't need to be the same with the same decision-making skills and leadership. I was trained by feminism to think that I needed to lead just as much as my husband, and it's just so messed up. So what do you think about that, Rachel?
Yeah, that's if I'm transitioning, I think, my Patreon away from Patreon itself because of issues with the platform itself over to Substack. But what I talk about on there a lot, I put some of the stuff that didn't fit into the book because I wanted the book to be like very like entry level basic introduction to these ideas. It's still pretty informative, it's still pretty dense, but I wanted it to not be like an 800-page tome about feminism that people were going to start and be like, oh, that's too much for me. So I put some of the things that didn't fit in there, but I focus a lot on the programming aspect and the propaganda aspect of feminism, because exactly like you said, we don't realize that this is like the water we've been swimming in our whole lives. Unless you were born like prior to 1950, you've grown up in a feminist ethos. It's the mainstream worldview, this egalitarian, feminist, kind of social justice ethos that we just live in. So you don't notice that you're even thinking that way. I would have never called myself a feminist when I was young either, but I was raised by a very far left radical Marxist feminist. And so just a lot of the stuff, I just grew up with it and it was in my head, and I didn't think I was feminist. I didn't think I was doing anything feminist. And I think, like you said, when you start to break the programming, then suddenly it's just like with so many other things, the scales fall from your eyes, and then you start just noticing it everywhere.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, this is everywhere. I see it all the time. I see it in myself. And even now, I mean, it's also, I think, kind of a natural struggle for us that has to do with the fall and what happened in the garden, where there's always going to be a little bit of something inside all of us women that wants to challenge men, challenge God. And we all have that, right? Where we want to challenge God a little bit and be like, well, I think I know, or, well, I trust myself, and you don't really notice you're doing it. And you have to kind of practice catching yourself. But yeah, it's like, we're all doing this, all women, and even a lot of men. I talk to men all the time who they don't even realize how much they've been programmed with it. And I will catch them saying certain things, and I'll be like, have you ever thought about why you see things this way? And they'll be like, oh, I didn't realize that. So yeah, it's very insidious, and it's kind of everywhere, and we're just swimming in feminist water. So we don't notice it until we step out of it.
And a big part of that is the thing about like wanting to stay home, because when we talked about this when I interviewed you the first time, you don't tell when you're a child, my generation and younger, you don't tell the adult who's asking you, what do you want to be when you grow up, that you want to be a housewife. I mean,
Right.
You have to pick something like doctor, or at least be like an office admin or something like that. But don't, like, being a housewife, that's not.
Yeah, it's a very unacceptable
cool
answer. Yeah. It's like, and in the book, that's the only way that I'd say the book ties in, is just like, where did this come from? You know what I mean? Where did this idea come from that all little girls should want to grow up and enter STEM fields, or all little girls should want to grow up and be Hillary Clinton, or wear like the pantsuit and be a boss, be a CEO? And that's so, we do raise little girls to think that way. We don't raise them to think that it's okay to serve, which is such a fundamental Christian ethic, being of service to your family, your community, and the people around you, to your church. And you don't have to be a mom. Most of us statistically end up being moms, but even if you're not, oh my goodness, there's, serving your husband, making the home, because men have to be out making the world function. They have to be out there engineering and doing the things men do. And they truly love and appreciate having the feminine side from a woman at home, making a home. Like, I don't know about your husband, but mine would live under a bridge and eat like Carl's Jr. for every meal. He's like that commercial. If it wasn't for us, some guys would just starve. That's Andy. So
okay, so this is a huge difference between myself and Rachel, because a few weeks ago, I think it was on Twitter or somewhere, you posted something like, my husband never has to cook for himself. I mean, I loved that you wrote this. I'm just saying it's so different than from my situation, because you said something like, my husband works really hard and he shouldn't have to think about his dinner. I'm proud to have his dinner ready for him when he gets home. And I love that, Rachel. I think that's amazing. And at the same time, my husband's an excellent cook, and he actually really enjoys cooking.
Yeah, and there's some guys that do. And
Yeah.
I think that people get the wrong idea. And even me, as somebody who runs around saying, I'm a patriarchist, I still get very annoyed when people think that that means, for instance, I'm not allowed to lift weights because I'm a woman, or I'm not allowed to fix a door hinge if I know how because I'm a woman. Like, we don't have to be that dogmatic and crazy about things. It doesn't need to be weird like that.
Yeah.
If men want to cook, or like a lot of men are artists, a lot of men do traditionally female things, I guess that you could say. A lot of the best fashion designers are men. A lot of men can kind of do some things that you would think are creative and therefore maybe think they're feminine. Like cooking. Cooking is kind of like a cool mix of artistry and chemistry, and so both the best chefs in the world are men. We would never say that like Gordon Ramsay can't cook, right? So of course Allison's husband can cook if he likes to cook. The difference with mine is that for me to be able to stay home, he has to work crazy hours. He's like he's got so many responsibilities. He's got so much going on. He has his YouTube show, which is growing really quickly, and he's streaming 4 or 5 nights a week. And then he's working like 70-hour weeks on top of it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the man is like a machine. So for
Where
me
does he get all that energy? He must get all the energy from your good cooking, right?
Maybe he's fueled by cigarettes. I don't know. If you guys have watched him, you know that he doesn't smoke that much off stream, by the way. Everybody's like, oh my God, they probably need like a second mortgage to pay for the smokes. But
before we forget, let's let everybody know to watch Andrew's stream tonight, because our friends Jerry and Dangerfield, we call him Henley or Hensky. They're going to be streaming tonight. So you said
they're going to do a base smoking guy stream. They're all going to be on camera. We're not
at 9 EST.
But it's
so somebody put the link to the Crucible in the chat, please, and we'll all be over there supporting our friends and Andrew. It's going to be so fun. So okay, but I didn't want to interrupt.
He has to work so incredibly hard for me to stay home that for me to get cranky about making him dinner would literally be ridiculous. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about, is this: we've been really conditioned to think that if we bring our husband a beer, or if we make him a sandwich, that we're like being abused, that we're being like trampled on or stepped over or something like that.
Yeah. And then look at how TV and magazines and everything portrays the princess woman, that she needs to have a man doing everything for her and constantly lavishing her with expensive gifts and all these things. And that is just not. And then for me, coming into Orthodox Christianity and watching and seeing, how the families and the couples in my church are, it's just so beautiful, because there isn't that kind of entitlement on the woman's part. And the women, we just serve our husbands because we love it, not because the Bible says so or the church makes us that way. We naturally enjoy. Why wouldn't we? Like, this is the man that is providing and protecting for us. Why not? I love sitting at my husband's feet and rubbing his feet while we're watching a movie. I'll sit on the floor, and I think to a lot of feminists, they'd be like, oh, that's so oppressive. But I just love that. He's sitting in his chair. He worked hard all day, and I'm sitting on the floor and I'm rubbing his feet and asking him if I can bring him anything. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. And we've been made to feel guilty, like there's something wrong, like we're internalizing our oppression, or like we have some unhealed trauma we haven't worked through if we do that. And it's like, now sometimes it's just as simple as we'd like to, and we don't mind it, and there's nothing wrong with it. And that's the thing, is that but in my research that I've done, I have found that, the early feminists and it still holds true, but even from the earliest days of it, it really was about this idea of like changing your whole worldview and seeing everything through the prism of you have been oppressed, right? You've been abused, oppressed, repressed. You have been trained to submit to somebody who has unjust, undeserved authority over you. And that if you're not actively working against that, then you are reinforcing it. And you'll hear feminists say that a lot. When I debate them, they'll say that kind of thing. They'll kind of be like, well, you're just reinforcing these abusive, toxic, oppressive ideas by doing those things. And you're undoing 150 years of progress because you're staying home with your kids. And I mean, that's kind of that whole social justice egalitarian ethos. It's like, it's a very different, they're different worldviews. You know what I mean? And it's really cool that with your background in the New Age, you were able to kind of snap right in and look around and be like, oh, this isn't bad. It's not horrible. It's not awful. Because I think for a lot of people, it's a struggle. It's like really, it's really hard for them. And even me too, like people might get this idea that I was just like born this way or something. But no, I screwed up a ton of stuff in my 20s in relationships. And it's the thing that you have to do as a woman that is so hard is really take a look at your own behavior and kind of go, okay, can I be honest with myself about what my attitude is like and how I think about things? You know what I mean? So that's the hard thing to do, especially because feminism programs you that you should never have to do that.
Right.
You hear the quotes, right, you guys? Everybody sees the memes and the quotes. It's like, if he can't handle me at my worst, then he don't deserve me at my best. That whole attitude trains us not to ever like look at ourselves and go, well, what could I be doing? What could I be doing that's toxic? Is there feminine behavior that could be toxic or bad or like, and we're only shooting ourselves in the foot at the end of the day. You know what I mean? Most women want some kind of a happy relationship, a happy marriage, or some kind of relationship with a man, right? Even if you think you don't believe in marriage or stuff like that, most of us want to cohabitate with the opposite sex. And if we train ourselves that we cannot be wrong because to be wrong is to be abused or oppressed, then you're never going to have that. Like you have guaranteed yourself to never have a happy relationship if that's your mindset. But what was it like for you, like prior to orthodoxy and prior to kind of coming out of all that stuff?
So I wouldn't say that I've had this huge transformation or this gigantic transition from being totally self-absorbed to now wanting to serve my husband night and day and only putting him first. And like that is, I'm somewhere in the middle, just working my way toward being a more selfless person, and more Christ-centered and God's will versus my will. And so part of that is coming from the whole New Age spirituality, which is all about you and your enlightenment and your spiritual evolution and you. Even though I was married, I wouldn't say that when I married my husband almost 20 years ago, that I was putting him first. I mean, we really have to do this. I truly believe if we want to be in a happy marriage that lasts, we cannot put ourselves first. And I was in my 20s and I was probably thinking more about how marriage was going to affect me more than how I could make my husband's life better by being his wife, which to me now is like so obvious. Like that is what a wife should want to enter marriage into, like thinking about like, how can I benefit this man? This man has a lot going on. I'm not talking about my husband, just like if I'm a woman right now in a time of my life where I'm hopefully going to get married at some point, I want to be looking at that man like he's got so much going on. How am I enhancing that for him? How am I making his life easier, better? How am I helping him by like you cooking him amazing meals? I mean, I do cook sometimes. I don't want to make it sound like he does all the cooking, but he does a lot of the cooking. But oh, and this is something else I was going to mention, how they took home ec out of schools.
Yeah.
When did they do that? Probably in the 80s or something.
Yeah, I think it was
And
right around.
now there are all these women who don't have any domestic skills that they could have learned in school, because like my mom didn't really teach me that much. I had to learn a lot of it on my own.
I did
But
too.
it was because I was rebellious. I mean, she would have been happy to teach me that stuff. It was my own, my other priorities were like partying, meditation, yoga, and that kind of stuff, not learning how to cook and clean. But anyway, I'm teaching. I'm a life coach, which I think I've told you that, or you probably know that following my Instagram. And I'm creating a program right now for women either wanting more polarity, more excitement, more love and connection in their marriage, or for women that are considering marriage or looking to get married eventually. And it's really all about self-responsibility, like you were saying, like looking at where we can improve in our communication and our delivery too, sometimes the way we ask for things.
Yeah.
And nagging is a huge thing. So that's part of my program that I'm going to be teaching, is like how to avoid nagging, because nagging does not work.
Right.
And expecting our husband or our boyfriend or whoever to be a certain way and then being disappointed when he's not, and thinking that we can change him to our expectations. I mean, that is a huge mistake that a lot of women make. So going back to your original question, I think when I first got married, I was looking for ways to manipulate and change him. I was the one who needed to change, not him. And so doing slowly, it's really been improving our marriage a lot. And I am not there yet, believe me. 3 nights ago, I said something without thinking, and it was not the right thing to do. And so now I'm working on how to have more self-control and not let that happen again, because that was a huge mistake. So it's a process.
Yep, I still do it too. And like I said, I think we don't have to be so hard on ourselves and think that we're going to become these perfect, like, trad wives, whatever the heck that is. If you've been online for more than 5 minutes talking about this stuff, you will run into that. Mm-hmm. And I do that too. I mean, part of the reason that Andy and I love each other and got married is because in some ways I do have a masculine side. I'm kind of a tomboy. I'm interested in some things that a lot of other women typically aren't, like politics, philosophy. I love debating. I can be very competitive. And so even knowing all the stuff I know, it's not like I don't still fall into the trap sometime of being like sassy or, correcting him about stuff that doesn't matter. And it's like, why would I do that? The good thing is that, you probably, since you've been married 20 years, which congratulations, that's amazing. That's a huge achievement, especially in today's day and age, to make it through 20 years. Like, you should get a medal for that. We've been together 15 years. And over the course of that time, now Andy knows, right? When I'm doing something like that, he'll kind of be like, wait. Like, what's actually bothering you? Are you tired? Are you hungry? Is it like, and truly, sometimes it's hormones. Like, that's a real thing that we deal with. Sometimes we're just really emotional, literally because of hormones. Yeah. And so things are a way bigger deal to us than they would normally be. And I think men, after they live with women for a while or things like that, they kind of start to understand that. They'll be like, okay, because he's like, I know you and you're very rational. You're pretty level-headed, and normally I can talk sense to you, but right now I can't talk sense to you. So what's like really going on? And sometimes it really is like, I'm mad about something else.
Yeah.
Something else is bothering me, or I'm really tired, or something like that. And so just like, again, I think women have been trained to think that we can't be wrong, right? If a man points anything out to us, it's mansplaining. If he corrects us on anything, it's abusive. Right. If anyone gives us any criticism, they're being mean. I see this all the time. And so it's like, you kind of have to train yourself a little bit to understand, like, okay, criticism is good. It doesn't mean the person is saying I'm bad or I'm terrible at whatever it is I'm doing, or it doesn't mean they don't love me or they, that I'm just no good. It's like, just take the little bit of criticism and off by yourself go, do I do that? Like, is that a thing that I do that I need to work on? And when men ask me, like, what should I look for? Like, how do I know if a woman is going to be like good? How do I know she's not going to run off with my kids with the neighbor guy in 5 years? I'm like, if you find a woman that can take criticism fairly, like, it not when you're just like badgering or being mean, but when somebody gives you like honest feedback, an honest critique of how you're behaving, and a woman can go, okay, like, let me think about that. Let me roll it around and consider that might be true. That might be true about me. Maybe that's a thing. If you find a woman like that, guys, you can probably work through anything, right? If she can kind of take a little criticism or a little bit of feedback from you when you say, look, the way you just talked to me just now makes me feel totally disrespected or totally unappreciated. And she can kind of take that and be like, okay, well, I didn't intend that or whatever, but maybe that's true. Maybe I could have said that in a way that wouldn't make you feel that way. That's a really, just that little thing can go a long way, I think, because women are just so trained that we have to be tough and we have to be a boss bitch or whatever, and he's not going to tell me nothing and nobody's going to tell me nothing. I already know, and I can do everything. It's that whole attitude will just really prevent you from connecting with people in general. But
that's and what you just described was pretty much how I was in the early part of the marriage, of not being able to take the criticism and thinking that, like, who is he to tell me that? And that goes along with the New Age stuff, where there's not any real growth. I mean, they do talk about spiritual growth, but like I said, it's more like acquisition of secret knowledge and stuff like that. It's not like there's no repentance,
like maybe the projection of will stuff, because I don't know a lot about the New Age, only what I've read. I have no personal experience with it at all. I just read a lot about like projection of your will to like attract things to you that you want.
It's about manipulating the world to get what you want with magical means and otherwise.
So you can see how you can see how feminist worldview would tie in beautifully with something like that, and like witchcraft and occultism, because that's what that stuff's all about,
And we all called each other goddesses, which I will never let anyone ever call me a goddess again, and I will never call anybody a goddess again.
Yeah.
Thanks for all these fun comments, you guys. This is really fun to do this live. We have 35 people with us. Rachel, you brought so many people to the stream. Thank you for being here.
Well, I'm a verified niche internet e-celebrity now, so I'm very important. No, I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
And I want to say that I loved your appearance on Conspiracy Castle with our friend Alex Stein. That was so much fun.
It really was.
I really like him.
Like, try having a more fun stream than a primetime 99 stream. You can't do it.
He's really going viral now too. I'm actually surprised when I ask someone and they've never heard of him before.
He was just on Tucker too, and he called me. Like, when they called him, he called me and he was like, okay, somebody just contacted me. This is what they said. Like, is it real or am I being trolled? Because I had the exact same thought. Like, I totally thought somebody was trolling me when they contacted me too. I was like, do you have a LinkedIn or a business email? Because I'm not buying this. And it
like prove this.
Yeah, I really did think that I was being trolled. So he called me with the same thing. Like, is this real? And I was like, it sounds like the same, thing. And I was like,
awesome. I loved everything. You guys, if you haven't seen Prime Stein? Alex?
Prime
What's
time. Alex Stein, prime time, 99.
Definitely check him out on his appearance on Tucker Carlson. It was great. And check out Rachel's appearance as well, because you were so calm and everything you said was so good, and you looked beautiful. Like everything was awesome.
That's so nice.
I mean, you must have been so nervous. I would be beyond nervous.
So the people asked me like how I got into doing this stuff, and it was like a couple of years ago. The kids were getting older. Like my oldest one graduated and the second one graduated. And it kind of hits you because you feel like you've been parenting tiny babies forever. And it suddenly hit me like, oh, I'm going to be moving into a new season of life where it's not all about babies, which I've been doing for 21 years now. Mm-hmm. And I was like, what should I do now? Like there's a lot of things I like to do. My problem's always been I have too many passions. I have too many things that I get really excited about and really into and love to do. And
me too.
So I asked Andy, I was like, well, what do you think? Like, you know me probably better than anyone. What do you think I should do? Like, what do you think I could uniquely like bring to people or do in the world? And he was like, well, you have this weird thing that's like a superpower where you just don't get very nervous. You don't get like intimidated easily or nervous about things. And you'll just like talk. My dad has been teasing me since I was little that I just talk forever and I just never shut up, which is kind of true. And he was like, you'll say things that other people are scared to say. You'll like say it right in front of people, not in a mean way, but you know what I mean? I've never been shy, and I don't get like when I did Tucker, the people working with me were asking me, are you nervous? Are you nervous? You seem so calm. You seem so calm. And I'm just like, I'm just going to talk to Tucker Carlson. I don't know. I'm just going to talk to him. Like it just didn't rattle me much. So I think that's like maybe not a common thing that most people would get like a lot more nervous, like a little bit, but more like nervous excitement. So that's kind of like how I started doing this stuff, guys. Honestly, I just started doing a few Instagram lives and a few little debates and stuff like that. And it was fun and I liked it. And I didn't get crazy nervous, but Alex Stein is a whole different level because he goes in front of like city councils and all this. Like I could never do that. Like
and dances and sings and does all kinds of stuff
and has costumes and he never misses a beat.
Right.
He never like, forgets. I feel like I would be like, what am I doing? And maybe second guess myself. But yeah, he's on a whole nother level.
Okay, Rachel, I want to go back to our relationship conversation about marriage. And so I wonder, what are your thoughts about the effects of COVID isolation, the last 2 years of couples being forced to, many couples being forced to work together at home. And then other parts of the isolation situation that's happened in the last 2 years. And then like porn and popular culture and just all the influences that we see now in this current age versus like maybe like couples in the 70s and the 80s didn't have to deal with as much. What are just some of your thoughts about how the recent events have affected us as a society and then how that affects marriages?
I think that it's one of the big problems, aside from just the feminist ideology, which is bad enough because it's just affected the family unit so much. But just, I mean, because you have a Telegram group and we have Discord groups and Telegram groups where it's singles, right? Christian singles trying to find people. And I get DMs from people, from guys looking for ladies and from ladies looking for guys. And they do want to make the connection. They want to have a marriage with somebody. But I have noticed it's very hard to get people out of their internet comfort zone and into real life. And I think it's because I'm going to be 42 this year. So I didn't have like the internet until I was already mostly developed, right? I was like in my early 20s before I had a home computer with like AOL on it, guys. Don't laugh at me. I'm old. But the younger generations, they're very comfortable with kind of like what my husband calls parasocial relationships, where you're talking on Discord, you're talking on Telegram, or you're watching your favorite streamers and you're in the chat, and those are your friends, and that's your social group. And that is very nice because it's very safe. You can turn it on when you want, turn it off when you want. You can present only the best parts of yourself and keep secret parts that you maybe don't want people to see right away. And I think that people who have lived that way for any amount of time, and then COVID made it worse, right? It's hard to get people out of that and in front of each other, where you can see body language and people feel awkward. And it's like, what do I do with my hands? And, they just, I can get people to talk online all the time, but it's very hard to get them to want to take the next step and meet in person. Have you kind of noticed that with people, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's just people are just more comfortable. Like you said, you don't have to show everything, because maybe this person isn't going to like me anymore once they spend actual time with me. And it could even just be a subconscious thought. They might not be thinking this, but they want to project a certain version of themselves and not have the other stuff revealed, and then taking that next step and going and meeting in person and spending actual time together. I'm talking about like more than a half hour coffee, but spending a day doing, or, traveling with somebody for the first time is when you really find out who they really are. And so I don't have a lot of, I actually do have some girlfriends. And then, like you said, in the Telegram group, there are some single girls, and everybody seems like it's just a really hard thing to actually go from swiping and seeing somebody and, oh, we're a match, to the actual real life encounter and then continuing that. It just seems like now, compared to when we were dating, it's like a night and day difference.
Yeah, and I can tell with my older daughters. My two oldest are girls, and they're 19 and 21 now, so they're dating and they're out off in the big scary world. And I notice things with them all the time that I've had to say. Like, one of them, she's so self-conscious about her body. And a lot of, in my generation, like, we grew up in the 80s, guys, and the only thing was, like, if you had the biggest hair, right, it was just like, how can I get my hair bigger like the girl next to me, or like wearing the cute jeans or the cool shoes. I mean, we still had those things, but there was not this hyper fixation on, like, what's my butt proportion to my waist, or do I have the body type that everybody thinks I need to have, or like the perfect eyebrows or the perfect highlighter, or it's a whole different thing now with body image and looks and presentation. Whereas if you grew up in the analog age, you met people in real life and that was how you met them. So it was like,
there weren't filters, because the filters, oh my gosh, I can't get over how the filters change. It's not just about, like, there were in the beginning
a line or something.
Yeah, there were some of the filters were just like they'd make your eyes a little bit bigger or something. I mean, those were the only ones I ever even knew about. And now there's full on shape of your face, the makeup, everything, the lips.
You look like a whole different,
completely different person. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So
and then when you have to meet someone in real life after they've seen you looking like that, then it probably creates some anxiety.
Yeah, that's what I think. And for younger girls growing up with this, they think everyone looks like that. I'm telling my daughters all the time, I'm like, they don't really look like that. And when I was younger, I did hair and makeup and nails. I was in the beauty industry. And I can look at a picture and be like, okay, that's hair extension and those are eyelash extensions. Her nails are fake. She has a spray tan. She's contoured. She's bronzed. She's got lip injections. Those boobs are fake, guys. She's had all the fat sucked out of her midsection and put into her hips. And my kids will be like, really? Really? And I'm like, yeah, that's all fake, you guys. That's not real. So, like, if you're raising girls, I think especially, it's very important to let them know that most of what they're seeing on Instagram and on the internet is an illusion. It's not
Yeah.
real, you know? So I think that affects everybody too. I think it affects the men, you know, and what their expectations are, and it affects women and how they see themselves. And
So, do you think anybody's talking to these girls and telling them, well, looks are one thing, and then there's spending the rest of your life with somebody?
yes,
And if you don't know how to communicate and make that man's life better than it was
yeah,
without you, he's gonna just be off to the next person. So it doesn't even matter if your hips are
yeah,
a certain size or you're beautiful or not. You have to be a beautiful person inside and create a bond with somebody that's meaningful, that has
yeah,
nothing to do with this. It's like,
exactly.
so is
That's
anybody talking to these girls about marriage and like life? We're talking about your rest of your life with the
yes,
same person. What are you going to do when you've been with this person for 10 years? You have to be an excellent person inside and be willing to look at your flaws, have him be willing to look at his, work on them together,
yeah.
communicate. I mean, our kids,
Well,
do kids have
no,
any
I don't think
idea?
anybody. I don't think anyone is. I don't think they. I don't see it, and
Mm-mm.
I would think I would have seen it at some point in the circles that we're in, if there were people, especially women, talking about it. You do see a lot of men in the manosphere talking about it, but usually by the time they get there, they're already like MGTOW, or they're very like anti-woman, and they've been burned so bad that it's hard to like drag them back from the brink. But my grandmother is turning 96 tomorrow. And she is, yeah, she's amazing. She's probably the reason that like I didn't dive headfirst into the radical feminism stuff with my mom, because I had my grandma, who was born in 1920, what, 28, something like that. Born in the 20s, raised during the Great Depression, got married right around the time of World War II. And the way that she would talk about marriage and relationships, she's escaped all of that stuff. I mean, she likes to have her hair nice, and she likes to wear a nice outfit and things like that. It's not like she doesn't care what she looks like, but my goodness, when she talks about, she has cool stories about how she was dating one guy and he left for World War II. And then my grandpa couldn't, because he had had scarlet fever or something as a kid and didn't qualify for the service. And she was torn between, you know, which guy to date. She, you know, and what to do about that. And the criteria they had then, she thought about things like, who can provide best for a family? What is the family of this person like? Do I like their family? Can I get along with them? Is his mother someone I want to be my mother-in-law? Do
Mhm.
they go to the same church? Do we have the same faith and the same background and worldview? Like,
Yeah.
will we agree on how to raise the kids
Mhm.
and what to do? Like, it was thought of much more. I don't want to take all the romance out of it, because that was still there, but it was thought of more like, okay, if this were a business arrangement, a business partnership, and I had to be in business with this person for the rest of my life, I would certainly think about those things, not what they look like in lingerie or you know, in board shorts or whatever it is. Like, her criteria was just so different. And I know when I was 20, if a guy was cute and funny, that was enough for me. Unfortunately, I fell into that trap completely, where it was just
Yeah.
like, oh my God, he's cute and he's fun, right?
Yeah.
And that didn't work out well for me. I learned some really hard lessons about
Mhm.
thinking about more about a man than if he's just cute and funny.
Yeah. Oh, I have a comment here for you to answer. Why do you ladies think women can't find suitable mates? What will happen if the number of unmarried, childless women continues to rise?
Well, my husband talks about this a lot, because there is a birth rate crisis right now. Almost every developed nation in the world is well below replacement rates. And you don't hear about that, because a lot of the people who run things are more in favor of depopulation, and they want that. It's intentional.
Right.
But you'll hear all the time that there's too many people. especially from like an atheist worldview or anything like that. There's too many people. There's too many people. We need less people. It's actually, we're on the brink of like a population collapse. And it's lots of factors. It's industrialization and modernization. It's also feminism. It's also the collapse of the family. It's also the fact that everybody's turned from God and become, you know, atheist or pagan or whatever it is. But I think the question, why do you ladies think women can't find a suitable mate? I think Allison will have a good perspective on this too. But in my experience, it's, people think it's unrealistic expectations, but I don't even think it's unrealistic. I think it's like they don't even know what their expectations are. Like I don't feel like they're even really thinking about what I was just saying my grandma would have thought about as far as a man. It's like, well, is he 6 feet tall? Does he have a full head of hair? Does he make six figures and that kind of thing? Yes, there's that. But it's also like I was saying, if the guy doesn't constantly reinforce your good view of yourself, you know, if you're not, like my mother was this way. She needed constant affirmation that she was pretty, that she was smart, that she was good enough, that she was loved. And it was like more than any one man would ever have been able to give her. Now that I'm an adult and I can look back, it's like, oh, that was, there's nobody on earth who could have satisfied that. And I think that's part of it. But what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think self-leadership and relationship with Christ first, and then knowing that you are fine the way you are. I mean, we live in a fallen world. We're human, but not, I mean, needing the man to constantly reassure you that you're pretty enough, smart enough, and all those things, that is way beyond what any man should have to do as a husband.
No one can deliver that.
So learning, and I don't want to talk about like, this isn't the whole self-love craze of the new age, that's not what I mean, but character, you know, building character and knowing that you're a good person. Okay, well, if you're not sure if you're a good person, start being a good person, start being more selfless and go and find somebody to serve, and then that builds character. And then there was something else you said that that just the expectations of men, that they I think a lot of girls might be limiting themselves too quickly, like not giving guys enough of a chance. I mean, they'll go on one date and they'll be like, oh, I can't see myself with him. Well, there are a lot of couples that were friends first. I know a lot of married people that have been together for a really long time. They met at work. They didn't have chemistry at first, but as they got to know each other over a long period of time, the trust and the admiration grew. And so I think it's because of the swiping, the dating apps. Like you make a decision in 1 second just because of the 2 or 3 lines that they wrote to describe themselves, and then a couple photos. That's so unrealistic. We can't.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's like fast food, but with boyfriends, right? It's like, oh, there's always more options. There's always more swipe.
Yeah, not giving.
When you might have somebody really great right in front of you, and you don't even. Yeah, I think.
And
that's a really good point.
I also wanted to go back to feminism because the idea of feminism has created so many problems, as we've already mentioned. But another one is that men might think, well, I don't need to pay for dinner because, well, we live in a feminist society. If I were paying for dinner, that would be so old school, like old fashioned. And, you know, we live in a modern time now, so I don't need to pay for dinner. And I know this is pretty controversial. I know there could be some guys watching right now who don't think they should have to pay for dinner, but I guess I'm old fashioned like that. I think the man should pay for dinner for the date. Not all the time, but
but it's an indication. Like I just saw somebody made a comment that men have become lazy and directionless. Well, I can tell you why. Because 100 years ago, when grandma was picking her man, she was thinking about the fact that, and I can tell you, I've had 5 kids. When you have a toddler and a 5-year-old and you're breastfeeding, you need somebody that can work and pay bills and take care of some things. You're not going to be strong woman doing everything on your own. Yeah. And so even feminists, probably way back in their mind, are looking for resources and men who can provide resources and men who are useful and practical. Like, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Vox Day's socio-sexual hierarchy, but it's kind of like that hierarchy that men have where there's alphas, and I don't like the word beta, and he doesn't really use it. He calls them deltas. Deltas are like the number 2 guy. They're always like the not the team captain, but his number 2 person. And then there's deltas, which would be most men. And the characteristics of a delta are they like to fix things, they like to build things, they like to be appreciated for the work that they do and for what they're capable of, what they know and what they can do. That would be my dad. And that's like most guys, you know, they will put a new backsplash in your kitchen. They will redo the bathroom. They will fix the crooked step that's fallen apart. They will install a new, you know, some kind of tech thing that I would have no idea what it is. Like this YouTube studio I'm in, I didn't put it together because I can't do that. But Andy's great at that. He can build a computer like from parts, you know what I mean? And women do value that still. But because we're constantly sending young men the message that we can do it ourselves, we don't need you to do things. What is their motivation? Like, what's a man's motivation for proving that he is competent or capable or can gather resources if we're constantly telling them we can do that ourselves? So 100 years ago, though, it was like, well, I'm not going to get a wife if I can't provide for one, you know? So we've kind of taken the motivation away for them.
You reminded me something that I'm going to be talking about in my training series for marriages is that idea of the woman thinking, oh, I'll just do it. If I want it done right, I'm just going to do it myself. And then the husband who has a natural desire to want to fix things and do things for his wife, the woman is just like cutting that off if she's not allowing him to do that sometimes. I mean, my husband loves to fix things and, like you said, take a computer apart and rebuild it. I mean, he's so resourceful like that. And it's like a project, you know, like a puzzle, like it's an accomplishment for him and he just really enjoys it. How would our relationship be if I was constantly taking things out of his hand and saying, I can do this. I don't need no man to fix my espresso machine. Like there's like no way. Then how is he going to, because it's like a demasculinization or whatever that word is, taking that masculinity, like just ripping it away from him, and instead of letting your man fix that whatever it is and then admiring how skillful he was, like how professional it looked, you know, and giving him that feedback of, wow, that's really hot that you know how to fix things. And not every man knows how to fix things. And I'm not saying that you have to know how to fix things to be a hot guy.
We're just kind of talking about archetypes, but they have to feel like they have something they bring.
Right. And that you acknowledge it, that you see that, and that makes you feel more like a woman because here he is being super manly. And that's what I mean by creating more polarity in relationships. It's super, super important. And so it's just a passion of mine. And I'm looking forward to helping more.
On that note, I want to see what you think of this. So most women think they want what we would consider like the classic alpha archetype, right? The hot football captain guy, the CEO who drives the like Ferrari, the guy who is at the top of the hierarchy and super successful. He's handsome. He's like Brad Pitt or whatever, right? He's handsome. He's tall. He's got money. He's popular. Most women are chasing after that, and it's a very small percentage of men. And what I have found, and I talk about this a lot, is that if most women were to get that man, they would be miserable. They would be very unhappy. And here's the reason. You don't get to that point in life without being super focused on your career and what you're trying to do. And the alpha male archetype, that kind of guy, the CEO, the business owner, the star guy who's like really successful, he has a million people demanding his time and attention. You know, people at work, people in his social circle, all the men around him. Like, my husband is this guy. And I'm not saying you have to be like a 6-figure dude to be this guy. He just is the guy in his social group that everybody goes to for advice, for leadership. They just kind of naturally follow him. He's just kind of naturally more of a leader. That's just his orientation for his personality. So, like, my mother would be absolutely miserable because Andy doesn't have time to like constantly affirm every little insecurity or devote massive amounts of time and attention to me and drop everything he's doing and go, well, what is it that you need, honey? You know, like, he's very busy and he's got a ton of people vying for his time and attention. And one of the reasons I think it works for us is that I'm fine with that. I know he'll get to me. I know I'm important, you know, and he does find ways to make that very clear to me and remind me of that if I do start to feel like kind of pouty. But if you want that like high achieving guy, you have to know you're not going to get a bunch of time. And if you're a personality as a woman that you need time, like if that's something important to you, you need his time, you need his attention, then you're going to be much happier with somebody who is like probably a good hard worker and a talented guy, but he's not going to be this alpha male type. He's going to be maybe 5'9", okay? Or maybe he's bald, but everything else about him is great. Like, you can't take guys out of the running because they're not this Brad Pitt perfect guy, especially if you're somebody that you know you're just a little bit more on the needy side. There's nothing like inherently wrong with that. Some women do just like need more affection and time. But if that's you, don't be going for these alpha guys. Don't be going for like the man who's got a million plates spinning all the time, because it's not going to work for you. You're not going to like it.
That's so important. That's so, like, I don't think people are talking about this, Rachel, or even thinking about this. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about the having similar values. And like for me, for example, I wouldn't say I need, or like that I need attention. Well, I do sometimes. I think it's natural. Like sometimes I like a little bit of attention from my husband. But more so, it's just having time together to enjoy life together.
Yeah.
And so, like, fortunately for me, it just worked out that the man of my dreams only works 3 days a week, and he works long hours sometimes, and it's very intense work. He's not just sitting there at a computer or hanging around with his feet propped up on the desk. He works very, very hard for those 3 days. But the other 4 days of the week, we get to be together, and we might even be in separate rooms of the house, but at least we can see each other, go for a walk together, go out and have lunch together. And so when you're for the single people watching right now, maybe something important to talk about is, like you're saying, like, is this guy someone who's so obsessed with his job and has so many demands on him and is going to be gone all the time? Maybe just all you have are weekends and a couple hours at night. Is that the kind of marriage you want? Or is this other guy who works less hours, but you're not going to have the kind of budget for fancy vacations or going out to 5-star restaurants? Like, if that's the kind of lifestyle you're used to, like, you need to have these kinds of conversations first. And the important thing is not expecting him to change what he's doing for you.
Yeah, exactly.
If he changes his job or changes his career, changes anything, it has to be because he wants to, not because you're going to be mad if he doesn't, and you're going to throw a big fit, and because that's just going to ruin your
agree.
marriage.
And that's like a form of what I call shit testing that women will do sometimes. Is like, I'm going to push you and see where your limits are. I'm going to push you and see what you'll put up with from me. I'm going to push you to see how far you're willing to go to prove that I'm the most important thing, right? And that's a very bad habit. The only kind of men who are going to like put up with that long term are not the kind of man you want, because they're going to be doormats. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if you don't want a doormat, then constantly shit testing somebody to see what they'll put up with from you is a very bad habit. So if you notice yourself doing that, do anything you can to break that habit, because that's a relationship killer too.
Oh, it's so disrespectful.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of this stuff, like, it comes from when we're kids, right? We either see our mom doing that to our dad, or we, our dad is a doormat and mom walks all over him. And so a lot of these behaviors might be rooted in stuff that was going on when you were growing up, and that's worth thinking about. I tell people, though, don't stay there forever.
Yeah.
Like, don't dwell in your childhood forever. Like, take what's useful from it and then realize that you don't have to be stuck there, and you can do things differently and move on,
Yeah, you should be a life coach. That's what life coaching's all about.
Well, I kind of am. I guess that's kind of, that's what motherhood is, really. You know what I mean? I'm responsible for these little people and how they go out into the world and what they do. And they call me all the time and Mom, this is what's going on with my friend or my boyfriend or this person at work. And, what should I do and how do I handle it? So I think that, well, it's probably since you don't have kids, you're kind of doing that. You're kind of sharing your experience and the things that you've learned with other people who aren't there yet, and it's kind of, motherhood's a lot the same that way, because you're just, I'm telling my 21-year-old the things I wish someone would have told me when I was 21.
Yes.
So.
It's a little bit different. I have to be more objective, and you probably have more emotional, your emotions are more in the game. But I did want to ask you about parenting a little bit. And so how do you think you've managed to have such a close relationship like that with your girls, so that they would look to you for advice? I mean, I didn't, sadly, I hate to admit it, I didn't go to my mom for help or guidance at all. So what do you think is she was there, she was willing, but I didn't care to ask her for help when I was the age that your girls are now.
Well, it's not perfect. Don't anybody out there who thinks that I think I'm a perfect mom or I know everything about how to do it. There's no such thing. There's no perfect parents, like they always say there's no handbook for parenting. It's true. You do have to kind of figure it out. And sometimes my oldest one will be like, she'll say to the younger ones, she'll be like, you guys don't even know. Like, you get the more experienced mom. I was like the experimental kid. So
I've heard this. Yeah.
That's an oldest sibling thing, and I think it's that there's a weird balance between, I didn't want to be a liberal parent who's like super permissive of everything and like best friend mom.
Oh, good. I'm glad you are not.
I do see that. I see that with my friends' parents, where it's like, when they turned into teenagers, their moms became their partying friend. You know what I mean? And everything was very permissible and there weren't a lot of boundaries, and that goes sideways fast. And my parents were kind of that way. They weren't trying. They didn't, to be like that or anything, but they both just kind of felt like their parents were very strict, right? So they wanted to be like extra permissive and be my friend so I'd be comfortable. But then I didn't go to my parents for much either, because it was almost like they were telling me they were kids too. So I thought, well, what do they know? And my dad's been married and divorced a few times, and so has my mom, and there was a lot of chaos. So it didn't feel like a good place to go for advice on how to not end up there. So with my kids, I've tried to be like accessible enough that they know if they screw up, they can come and tell us. They might still get in trouble. You might still get grounded. You probably still going to get punished if you did something bad, but we always tell them that's not as bad as what will happen if you lie and feel like you can't talk to us. You're going to end up in a way worse situation. And it's part of learning to be honest and admit when you screw up. And so it's kind of like a line you have to walk between, they need to know that they can screw up and you're still going to love them. And that there's, no matter how bad the screw up seems at the time, there's always a way out of it. There's forgiveness, and it's just like with Christianity, there's repentance, and there's a way to learn from that and get better. But also that, there really are there's right and wrong, there's good and bad, there are boundaries, and you have to, you can't raise kids without that, because if you do, that goes really wrong really quick. And so I guess that's kind of what I've tried to do, is like be accessible enough to them that they feel like they can come to me. But they also know I'm going to give it to them straight, and I'm going to tell them, like, if one of them came to me and was like, I'm thinking I'm going to do this, and I was like, I can't say that I like approve of that, and here's why. Let me explain. Let me tell you what I think about that. And of course, they're adults now, so they're going to do what they want. They know that even if I don't agree, I still love them. I'm not going to like cut them out of the family or anything. But yeah, it's like, I think that the church and like having a spiritual father, if I had that more growing up, because I was Protestant, so we didn't really have that. If I had that, I think that's a really good type for parenting. How you go to your spiritual father, you confess your sins, and he's going to tell you if you're doing something you shouldn't be doing. He's not going to give you permission. He's going to say, no, I'm not going to endorse that, and here's why, and maybe put you back on a path you should be on. I think that's a really good like foundation for how to parent, honestly. And I think it's one of the great things about Orthodoxy, that if you want to be a parent, that's a good model for how to parent.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. And this goes back to, it's so funny how we're kind of like circling back to earlier topics, but the whole rebellion piece that we were talking about before, and Orthodoxy is exactly what I need, because I need the structure, and but it's so hard for me because I have this rebellious spirit that I've grown used to living with for all these years. And I rebelled very early. That's why I got into the occult. That's why I got into drugs and partying, and just all the things that I got into is because I had such a rebellious spirit. And having a spiritual father now is so awesome, and also very scary.
Yeah.
and then going back to parenting, as your children know that you're still going to, that you still love, that you will love them no matter what.
Yeah.
That is so important, because you can have those boundaries, you can give them the structure, the rules that are there for their own protection.
Yeah.
And they know that it's not because you're just a jerk and controlling and want to ruin their lives. It's for their protection, and
Exactly.
to live a life that is going to be ultimately easier, because they're not going to have to battle with all of these passions. Part of, for those watching who don't know what a spiritual father is for, a big part of it is helping you deal with your passions. And our passions are what lead us to very dangerous situations that can be just like physically, spiritually, emotionally really bad and really hard to heal from. And so as a parent, I can just see this relationship that you're talking about, this like comparison of spiritual father and parenting. And that's awesome. That's so, you can write a book about this, actually.
I want to ask you, because you said you didn't really go to your mother. Was there like, did you have the idea that it wasn't okay to mess up because there wasn't really like a path back to salvation, say, or like it was, because you said having a spiritual father is kind of scary too, and it is. It's a little bit scary to confess all these things to somebody and hope that what you approach them with something that you want to do. Like, I just had this conversation with my priest and with one of the deacons at our church about the stuff that I'm doing, because I want to make sure that I'm not overstepping my boundaries and what I should be talking about, what I should be doing, and make sure that it's cohesive and coherent with orthodoxy and with entering the church, because I'm still a catechumen too. Hopefully I will be baptized soon. Well, I won't be baptized because my church recognizes my baptism as valid. And I'm a little jealous because the rest of the family gets the full submersion baptism and all that. I get chrismated, but hopefully it will be very soon. But I was wondering if you had experiences growing up that made you feel like it wasn't a good idea to go to your parents, like that made you decide to look outside? Was it like that they were strict and so you were rebelling, or was it something else?
Yeah, my father was, he loved me dearly, but he had so many problems, like very serious PTSD and alcoholism and all these things. And so he was one of those alcoholic fathers who like loves you, is there for you, and then the next day you don't even know who this person is. He's like a complete stranger. And it's very confusing, especially when you're really little.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have trust. I didn't respect him or trust him because he was so demanding of respect that it was like, I just can't respect you.
Right.
Because you're all over the place. You're not consistent. And
Yeah.
then my mom, she really wanted to be there for me, but she's kind of square, like not cool. And and it just seemed like as I was getting interested in things that were not interesting to her at all, because they were so extreme, like hippie, all the hippie stuff I was into was so extremely weird for her. I was just very artistic, very free spirited, and so she would try to actually shame me for being that way. So she would tell me things like, you're just a wannabe hippie, you're not a real hippie.
Oh.
And she thought she was going to shame it out of me, but all it did was make me be like, oh, well then who are you? Like, I'm not going to share anything with you if you're just going to make fun of me and tell me that I'm not even a real hippie.
Yeah.
So we grew apart. So
yeah,
that's pretty much why.
Well, what you said about consistency is probably one of my number one parenting tips. When people do, like, our kids have always been super well behaved in public, so all our friends are always like, how do you do that? What kind of black magic are you using to get the kids to behave in public? Really, the secret is consistency. If kids don't know what's expected, and if that changes all the time, they give up and they're like, screw it, I'll just do whatever, because I don't know how to win with you. So if the expectations and the rules are consistent, they don't have to be perfect, but they have to be consistent, because otherwise you're sending all kinds of mixed messages, and kids go, well, I don't know. Like, my dad would do that, where he was very busy, and he was a single dad for a long time, because my mom kind of went off the rails for a while and wasn't really around. So my dad had to try to juggle working and being a girl dad by himself. And so on days that he was exhausted and tired and just didn't have it in him, he was like, just do whatever you want. Like, I don't care. And then he would feel guilty, right? And then he would be like, oh, I should be parenting. I have to be stern dad now, and I have to lay down the law and set the rules. And so, like, especially my sister, it definitely affected me too. But with my sister, she'd be like, okay, so this is all arbitrary, so I'm just going to do what I want. Like, 1 week I can sneak out of the house with boys and I don't even get grounded. The next week I don't clean my hair out of the drain and I'm grounded for a month. Like, this makes no sense, And I think with parenting, you get tired, and you have days where you're just like, really, I just can't right now. I haven't slept and I'm exhausted and I'm so busy. But you just have to try to be as consistent as possible with discipline, so that kids know. They have to know where the limit is and where the boundary is, what they can and can't do. Because if you don't do that, they don't know how to win. You're not giving them a game that has consistent rules that they can win at. So they just quit and they do whatever they want, or they get mad and they rebel. And
that was me. There was no consistency. So I was just like, well, I'm just going to do my own thing then.
Yep. I mean, you can't.
But I wasn't, I don't want to make it sound like I was like a really bad girl. No,
you're probably just like, I'm going to find my own way then, because you're not giving me a clear path. So I'm just going to figure this out on my own.
Yeah. And that included witchcraft and yoga and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So, we have a question. I wanted to ask what advice you would give to a woman in her mid-20s who's about to be married, and also newlywed advice. That's a really general question. I would say watch my video series that I'm going to be launching soon, because I'm going to be giving so much detail for this question. But Rachel, do you want to give just like a general answer?
Yeah, general answer is when you first get married, there's definitely an adjustment period. Everybody thinks there's a honeymoon period, but what I've seen is like it's a whole different thing to be married, right? It's not the same as courting, and there is an adjustment. So, like, be really patient with your spouse, be really patient with yourself. Both of you should give yourself some time to adjust to each other's. The expectations are a little different when you're like living together and you're a married couple. It just does change things in some ways. So, just like, try to relax. Everything's not the end of the world. You're going to have some fights. Those don't have to be the end of the world. Just give yourself some room to adjust and adjust to each other. And like Allison was saying, just kind of think about what you're contributing to the other person's life. I think that's super important that women don't think about as much.
Right.
Like, why would he want me in his life other than that I'm hot, right? Other than the fact that I'm hot, what am I contributing? How am I making his life better? And also, my best marriage advice is all of us, men and women, tend to do this. They go, well, if she wouldn't do that, then I wouldn't do this. And the woman goes, well, once he starts doing this, then I'll, give him whatever he wants. Don't ever think the other person has to change or do something or provide something first. Always, and it's hard to do. This is hard to do, but look at yourself and say, well, okay, regardless of whatever he's doing that's irritating me or that I don't think is fair or whatever, what can I do that's going to like bring some peace or provide a way for us to get along or get past this or sort this out? You have to think about the other person first. It is part of the ascetic lifestyle. Think about this. If you don't get married, maybe you go into monastic life, right? Well, the counterpart for that is the marriage life, and it is an ascetic life too, because you are learning to put other people first, to serve somebody else, to not always say, well, I need to get what I need first, and then once I get what I need, I'll give you something. You just can't approach it that way. You always have to be thinking about what you're providing. Now, of course, if you are always doing that, the other person is treating you like garbage, neither Allison or I are going to sit here and say that would be okay, or that abuse is okay, or any of that stuff. But in general, you got married because you loved each other, right? You wanted to be together. So try to put that person first and not like withhold affection or what that person needs, saying, I need to get mine first, then I'll give you what you need.
Or like the silent treatment as punishment is like so immature. There's so many ways that people sometimes can react to things in such an emotionally immature way, and then it becomes a pattern and a habit, and then it just breaks down that relationship. Or calling the kettle black, well, you're the one who always does this. I don't do that. You do that. Like you're saying, you have to take responsibility.
I wouldn't do that if you didn't do this. Yeah.
But speaking of that, I did a live stream on my Instagram today, just a really quick one. I'm going to be reading from this book. Speaking of ascetics, have you seen this book before, Rachel?
No.
My spiritual father wanted me to buy it, and he's going to be giving me homework from it. And then I told my godmother to be, and she bought it for me for Lent, and she's buying herself one. And so we're going to read it together and discuss it. And I'm reading the chapters on Instagram. So I did chapter 1 today. They're really quick. It's a very understated book, but super powerful. I mean, the message, I know why my spiritual father wanted me to read it. It's because it has to do with the ascetic lifestyle, that like that's the way to be. Like, we don't need to be so self-absorbed and making sure that every single one of our creature comforts are being met. And I mean, that's not the secret to happy life, making sure that you're comfortable all the time. So
but isn't that what we're always told? I mean, that's like what we're always told.
Well, I mean, I'm being honest, I still have a lot of that from my previous life, my pre-Christian life was all about satisfying my desires and my comforts and everything. And so within a couple chapters, I was like, I know why he wants me to read this. So
that sounds like a really good series to do.
So this could be a good book for Ash. You were asking for advice. Maybe a lot of the advice is to be found in this book. I don't know. And then if you're Orthodox or planning to be Orthodox, then definitely meeting with your priest. I think most priests will do premarital counseling for at least, a month or something before the wedding.
That's a good idea too. That's a good idea too. And if you're going to get married, talk about the hard things. Talk about, do we agree on how to raise the kids? Do we agree on discipline? Do we agree on spiritual life? Like, I know somebody who recently got married kind of youngish, early 20s, and then married somebody with a completely different religion. And then they acted like this was news after they got married. They're like, suddenly we're fighting about this. I'm like, well, but we just don't think about marriage this way anymore. And you have to have those hard conversations about the things that really matter and what you're going to do if you don't agree. So,
yeah. And the whole leadership thing. Are you a woman who needs to have equality, equal power with your husband? And is your fiance someone who believes in the natural order and having the man lead in marriage? I mean, I don't want to say he's right. I mean, in a way, he is if you're a Christian, but if the two of you don't agree on that, then I'm not saying don't get married. I'm just saying work that out before you get married. See how flexible you are, and if you can start to undo the effects of feminism, because a lot of women can and do, and that's what I'm passionate about. If anybody wants help with that, reach out to me, and then read Rachel's book for sure.
And one other note on what you just said about like the power dynamics in a marriage. If you have a hard time understanding this, especially if you weren't raised in like a Christian worldview or anything, I'm trying to remember the exact verse, and I can't off the top of my head. I have it bookmarked in here in my phone, but it's the passage in the New Testament where it's talking about marriage. And people love to quote either one half or the other. They'll either be like, well, the Bible says that the women have to submit and do what the man says. Or the women will say, yeah, but it also says that the man has to give himself up for her and submit like Christ did to the church. It's both. That is the best possible way to understand the marriage dynamic is, yes, we submit. Yes, the man is the leader, but he also is expected to give his life for you the way Christ did for the church. Okay. So like he has the leadership role because he's expected to give so much. He's expected to be responsible for so much.
Yeah. It's a huge responsibility.
Yeah. It's a huge responsibility. And it's a lot of pressure. Men have to deal with a lot of pressure that I don't think women always understand. If you're the breadwinner, if you're the guy who's going to be, if there's a fire or a flood, you got to save everybody. You're expected to make good decisions. Men have a lot of pressure to be competent, right? To get things right, to do it correctly, to win, to gather resources, to have money. And that's a lot of pressure that women kind of like take for granted, I think. And so it's not like this false choice of like, well, if he's in charge, then he rules with an iron fist and he gets to tell me what to do and boss me around. It's not really like that. Like, I'm the mother, I'm in charge of my kids, but do I smack them around and like abuse them? No, that wouldn't make it right. I never do this with parenting either. Like, because I said so, or because I'm the boss. It's not that. It's like, well, you depend on me, right? You need me to give you shelter and give you food and guide you and help you. And if you're sick, I'm the person who takes care of you. And so you trust me to do all those things, right? So then you should trust to follow me then and listen to what I tell you. And it's not just like, do what I say, right? It's the same thing in a marriage where the man is saying, look, you trust me to make the money, pay the bills, or whatever it is. You wouldn't marry a man who you thought was an incompetent boob, even though you see a lot of that on TV, you know, in The Simpsons and Everybody Loves Raymond, all the sitcoms. The man is a blubbering idiot who would be completely lost if it wasn't for his wife. He can't do anything. But you're not going to marry a man who you think is an incompetent person who just can't handle anything. So don't treat him.
Or also who you don't feel safe with. You know,
Right.
if you're thinking about marrying someone who does not provide you that safety before the marriage, do you really think that's going to happen after the marriage? I mean,
Right.
I'm not saying nobody people do change and heal, but don't expect that. You want to make sure that you feel safe.
Yeah.
With
And
someone.
when we have these conversations, I feel like we shouldn't have to say this, but we probably do. Just we're talking about normal, at least somewhat healthy relationships. We're not talking about you being married to somebody who gets drunk and beats the crap out of you. We're not talking about a woman who has like borderline personality disorder and will burn down your house if you do something she doesn't like. We're not talking about like super abusive, crazy stuff. We're talking about like the average couple that they love each other, but there's something not working. They're struggling. They can't communicate. They can't figure it out. That's what we're talking about. Just to put that out there.
I know. Hopefully we don't have to say that, but I did write that into my outline for my course too.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Yeah,
if there is abuse, this course is not for you.
Right,
So
exactly.
please seek help.
Yeah.
Well, oh my gosh, we've been talking for an hour and a half, Rachel. This is so much fun. Okay, you guys, everybody watching, if you've been enjoying this and you want Rachel to come back in a month or so, please let us know and give us some ideas for just maybe even just deepening this conversation, same general topics. But if you have questions or anything we didn't talk about today, please let us know in the comments. And
Yeah,
we will
definitely leave
into...
comments, guys, because the feedback is going to be like Allison said, there's not very many people talking about this, especially not women. You can go find tons of female empowerment stuff.
Yeah.
And you can find plenty of MGTOW stuff out there too, but there's not many people doing this. And Allison and I have talked about this, and we know there's a big need out there that people want relationships, marriages, and families. And it's rough out there, guys. We know that. Like we talk to people all the time who, you know, it's guys that can't find women and women who can't find the right guy, or, you know, and people are just struggling out there. So whatever it is that any comments or questions, put them in the comments. It also helps the channel if you do that. So give us the feedback so we know what the needs are and what people want to hear about.
And not just finding mates, but having the best possible relationship. I mean, a lot of people are just going through the motions and living their life, and they're not really thriving in their marriage, and they're not really, you know, maybe they're thinking about leaving, or what would it be like to leave? I went through a period, a couple of periods where I was trying to think, like, could I be single? What would that be like? And you guys, anyone who's in a marriage and you're thinking about those kinds of thoughts, there is help. There's support for you. There's hope. Don't give up. If at least one of you is committed and really wants it to work, it's not too late. And you can, you know, reading a book is one thing, but actually getting coaching and support and an objective viewpoint and somebody to look and see where your blind spots are and where you're not quite communicating at the ultimate level. And you know, sometimes you just can't, because when you're married, you're too close. You can't see what's going on. And so I went to marriage therapy. I went to a couple different psychotherapy, you know, marriage and family therapists. It didn't help. But some are better than others. So keep looking for someone if you are in that situation where you just feel like, well, I tried that and it didn't work. Well, you just didn't meet the right person to give you the support.
And even the humanities fields, you guys, I can tell you from my research, are just absolutely saturated with feminist, egalitarian ideas. So it's not shocking to me that marriage counseling doesn't work for most people.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, but we can tell you, because I've been through this too. I think anyone who's been married a long time will tell you there's been at least one point where the people were ready to throw in the towel. Andy and I had that early on, a couple years in. And if you can get this right, if you can get those light bulbs to go off and you can get past those things, Allison has a great relationship that she's like, she really loves and adores, and so do I. And it can make life so wonderful. Like, you will really have days and moments where you wake up and you feel like you want to pinch yourself, because it can be that good. It really can be that good. They write all the songs and the poems and the stories about love for a reason. So don't be black-pilled. Everybody's so black-pilled and hopeless about marriage anymore, but it can be really wonderful. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And even if you're going through a long period of time, years of struggling, it doesn't mean that it's always going to be like that. And
yeah, that's true. Gavin McInnes said that once, and I thought, it sounds like a weird piece of advice, but it's true. He always says, you can have a bad month, you can have a bad year. It doesn't mean you have a bad marriage.
Right.
That's true. And if you're in it for life, if you're going to be married for 40 years and you had 5 bad years, you still had 35 good years. And the grass is not greener either. Everybody gets divorced and goes off, and you're just going to have a new set of problems with the next person.
Yeah, because if the reason it didn't work was because you weren't taking responsibility for yourself, it's going to be the same with the next person if you're not taking responsibility for yourself and you're not looking at...
I have talked about that on stream too, because that's what happened to me. Andy was like the third very serious person that I tried to be in a relationship with, and I was running into the same darn problems. And I had this aha moment in the shower one day where I was like, it's not statistically likely that it's not me, right? If the same things happened 3 times, it's probably got something to do with me. Like, either I'm choosing a certain thing or person, or I'm doing a certain thing. And I was like, okay, if I really want a stable, happy family life, I'm going to have to get to the bottom of what I'm doing and what I can do better. So,
or even just what your thoughts are leading you to. It doesn't necessarily mean you're an argumentative person, or that there's something like really bad or wrong about you. It could just be a train of thought that you're not even aware of, and how that's affecting you. And patterns. That's what I love to do with people, is looking at the patterns, looking at the origin of that, and then seeing if there's even the tiniest way to shift that and look at it differently, or work with it in a different way, or respond a different way the next time it comes up, or just playing around and like you said earlier, being really patient with yourself, just playing with it until it just starts running smoothly and effortlessly again. It's so much fun. Okay, well, once again, everybody go over to the Crucible tonight at 9 EST to see our friends Jerry and Hendo. Dangerfield Henley and Exposing Powerful Lies will be guests on Andrew's show, Rachel's husband. And Rachel, you're usually in the chat, right? You're a mod.
Yeah, unless I get, busy with kid stuff or whatever, but I try to be in there when I can. Yeah.
Do you know what the topic is, or is it just going to be like this, just like
I think they had said they were going to try to do a little bit of like conspiracy kind of stuff, maybe, or geopolitics stuff, but they figured that they would kind of let it go where it went. But it's 3 based cool guys who are all very smart. All 3 of these guys are very smart,
right?
But like in different areas. So I'm super excited to see like the 3 of them talk and what comes out of that. I think it's really cool. And
I don't even think I mentioned Henley's channel is not called Dangerfield Henley. I didn't even think of that. It's Based Lit Analyzer. Based with a Z, lit as in literature, analyzer. And his videos, Rachel, did you see the one he did after the Oscars?
No, I've missed a couple of them, but every one I watch, I'm like,
so good. I know. It's like we're going to the best university with
It
the
is.
best teacher, and his memory of all these books he's read, and he was an actor. He did Shakespeare, and
And you can tell, like, that's what makes it so entertaining. It's not like I had advanced literature classes, guys, and my teachers were like, and this, and they would just read the stuff, and it was very boring, and I was falling asleep. But he's very animated. You can tell his acting skills come out. He does all the voices, and he gets really passionate about stuff. And so I'm like, I was sitting there yesterday watching it going, what the heck? I love poetry now. I've never loved poetry in my life. How did he do this? But
yeah, he's a poet too. He writes poetry.
it's super interesting.
But his analysis of what happened at the Oscars, he compares it with a Shakespeare play. Of course, with my dumb memory, I can't remember which one, but he goes like line by line and shows how it relates to this Shakespeare play. I mean,
yeah,
masterful.
that's
And then
the stuff that you get. You guys, it's the most underrated channel on YouTube. You
it
gotta
is,
go
yeah,
over
we've got to share. Yeah, let's get this channel to go viral, because you'll learn so much. And then exposing powerful lies. If you guys don't know, our friend Jerry, he has been doing some really good reaction videos to New Age YouTube content creators who are just like so out there, and he, without being mean, I mean, this is something I don't understand. How does he do this? Because he's not cutting them down, but he is. I mean, he's just logically showing that what they're saying makes no sense. It's like so out there, but not in a mean way. I feel like if I did that, I'd get the worst comments like, "You're so mean. Why are you so mean?" And he's just, something about him is, because he's not doing it to be judgmental. He's just showing how it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I said
Jerry's
that
like
right.
a very warm, loving person. Like, that just radiates off of him. So even when he is like criticizing or breaking stuff down, it doesn't come off that way.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's very humble, and the reason he's doing it is because he was a new ager. He was teaching people or telling people about all kinds of wacky occult kind of new agey, energetic healing stuff. And so and he's in the chat if anybody wants to say hi to him. And he's brilliant, and he's humble, and he loves the Lord. He loves orthodoxy. He has some good news. I don't know if he wants me to share, but yeah, our brothers and our sisters, Eliana, Orthodox Desert Rose, we call her Ellie. She's amazing. All you guys, everybody who is here
this is
today.
my favorite part of the internet, guys. Like, I've been in a lot of weird corners of the internet with a lot of people, and I'm like, the ortho bros, the ortho chicks, like the Orthodox sphere is by far my favorite personally, because it's like these really intelligent, really quality people who have so much to offer, and that's not my normal experience online with most groups that I've like associated with or anything. So
yeah, and it's just so fun to see everybody on the different chats too, like Church of the Eternal Logos, Jay Dyer, and we just all say hi to each other, and it's just so much fun. So where can people find you if they don't already know?
I have a Substack. If you go to any of my socials, there's a link tree in there with all my stuff. I've got like Substack. I'm on Twitter. Been in some bizarre Twitter wars the last few days. That happens sometimes, but so Twitter, Gab. I do some articles sometimes for Gab. I have Substack that's got my writing on it. I do have a Patreon right now. I think I'm going to transition it over to Substack and just do like a subscription there instead, rather than have all this stuff going on. So yeah, just find me online. You can find my book on Amazon. If you want like a signed copy through me, you can contact me and I can get you one of those. So that's it. I'm not streaming or anything, which is, it's cool that Allison wanted to have me on to do this, because I was like, there's things I want to say, but I don't have time to commit to like my own show right now. So it's very cool that these wonderful people with their awesome shows will let me come on and ramble. So thank you so much for having me on.
Well, I can't wait to have you back. And everybody knows where to find me, but I'll tell you again, on Instagram at A Devotional Heart. And I have a link tree. It's a bit.ly link, and that should always be in all my videos. I do accept donations to keep me going on this channel. Right now, my energy has been going toward my Etsy shop because it's been so busy. I've been getting a lot of orders, and my coaching, I've been getting a lot of inquiries for coaching. And I'm, like I said, creating this video series on relationships. So that's why I haven't been doing a lot of interviews lately. My energy's been going into all these things. Plus, the weather's been amazing, and I've been spending more time at church. So
it's 37 and wet snowing here in Michigan today.
Sorry, but you have those
Probably
summers.
great.
You have those incredible summers, and you can jump into the lakes.
Yes.
I would love to come visit you sometime.
You should. We have a monastery here.
Oh, that's right. Oh, before we go, can you tell everybody about the monastery?
Yeah, I live right near a Romanian Orthodox monastery. We're out in the middle of nowhere, out in the country. Amazing. And the Lord just happened, like I couldn't find a house when we were trying to move. It was, the market around here was so hot that if you found a house, it would be gone by the time you could even contact your realtor about it. So we were having a heck of a time finding a house. And I found this house and it had everything I wanted, but it was like an hour away from where we used to live. And I was kind of torn about it, but we went with it because we loved the house, and it couldn't really be anything other than divine providence that it's a mile from a Romanian Orthodox monastery, guys. Like,
so cool.
So it's very cool that we have that. I go to a regular church in a city that's like an hour away because the monastery doesn't have enough resources to do catechumens yet. It's smaller, and their priest got stuck in Romania during COVID. They're still getting him here.
Oh, so they don't even have liturgy?
They do, but they have to have somebody come from either Chicago or over on the east side of the state where there's another monastery. Whenever they can like borrow a priest, they have it there. So when they have it there, we go because it's so close and so easy. But they told us, they were like, if you guys are catechumens, you really kind of need somebody who can provide everything that you need for that process. So we do go to a wonderful church about an hour away to do that. And then we also kind of go to the monastery. So we're very lucky that way. But they are going to be getting a priest here soon. And they have a summer camp that they do with kids where they have kids come from all over the country and stay. So it's really cool. And then there's Holy Door Mission, which is like an hour and a half from me. And I think Patrick and a lot of the Ortho Bros have been there. And I haven't been there yet. So I'm going to try to make it there this summer. So.
Oh, yeah, because Indiana and Michigan aren't very far away from each other.
Yeah, we're like,
and I'm share a border, right?
Yeah, I'm on the southern end, so like I think Pano and I live like an hour and a half from each other, and DPH and I live like 2 or 3 hours from each other. So we're gonna try to do like a Midwest meetup at some point. But...
Oh, that would be cool.
Well, thanks, Ellie. You're so nice.
I know, isn't she the best? She's always sharing stuff for me, and you guys, all of you who share my posts, and especially the Green Feathers, big shout out to Nick, my friend, the Green Feathers. He's always sharing my videos and things, and Jerry and Jethro and Henley, you guys, we just love you guys.
Yeah.
And anyone else that I've forgotten, I just love you guys. Such a great community. And so, Rachel, I guess we'll say goodbye, even though I don't want to. I could talk to you for another 3 hours.
Well, you know, if you ever need people to just talk, I can just flap my gums all day long. I got all kinds of things to say. But hopefully I'm listening too, you know, because you have a lot to share that is completely outside my personal experience that is so common to other people. You know what I mean? With like the new age stuff and all that. Mm-hmm. That is important. And that's not like, nobody could ask me how to transition out of that, because I'd be like, I could try to help you, but I was raised Protestant. I didn't have a very exciting conversion from like a conservative Protestant background to Orthodoxy. It is different. It's different, but it's, you know, it's just not very, that's just not my specialty. That's your specialty. And that's what you're good at, is that sort of thing. So I like getting your perspective on stuff too, because you do have a totally different place you're coming from with everything. So
yeah, and that's actually kind of how I got into Orthodoxy, was because Church of the Eternal Logos, those videos, you know, the things that Patrick was talking about were so relatable to me. His history, where he, you know, the things that he was exploring before finding orthodoxy. Like, we just have a lot of parallels. And so Jay Dyer and Patrick are the ones who brought me into orthodoxy. So I hope my channel can at least give a little bit of support and guidance to people that are leaving the New Age and are devoted to finding truth at all costs. So that's what I'm trying to do. And one last thing, you guys, I have a guest that I'm interviewing for my other show, Devotional Hearts Show, on Saturday. I think it's going to be pre-recorded, so I think I'll probably post it on Monday to the channel. But it's my friend Alex from Instagram, and he's a reader. He's super, super devoted to Christ, and we're going to be talking about the differences between Eastern and Western Christianity and some of the things about Western Christianity that lead people into Eastern Christianity.
I think that's another conversation. That's something I do want to do more of. That's why I love like apologetics. I've been studying my butt off with apologetics because seeing all the debates that Andy has on his show, nobody knows what the heck Christianity is anymore. Nobody knows what it means because Protestants think it's one thing, Roman Catholics think it's another, Mormons think it's something else, and we have all these Western sects that are they like miss the whole point of Eastern Christianity, which is true Christianity. And guys, if you've struggled with your Western Christianity, if you struggle with your faith and evangelizing and it's not making sense to you, it's because it doesn't make sense. Those systems don't make sense. This is where like my philosophy background, listening to Jay, it took me like 20 minutes of listening to him argue a Protestant for me to be like, yep, that's it. Because I struggled with that, with the rational side of my brain and the presuppositions and the logical argumentation side of justifying the worldview. For me, I always struggled with it. I knew I believed in God. I knew I believed in Christ, but I couldn't reconcile Calvinism and Protestantism. And so finding out there was a coherent Christian worldview and that it was the original one and it was the church that Christ started himself, that the apostles passed on, it was like, huh, why didn't I know about this for 40 years? So,
and we have the sacraments.
Yes.
There you go. Now you have all you need, the tradition. And
so if you're going to talk about Western versus Eastern Christianity, that's another thing that people aren't talking about enough and that needs to be out there.
Okay, then you are coming back and we're going to talk about it.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Sounds awesome.
All right, guys. All right, we're finally, really this time, we're saying goodbye. I promise. Okay, so again, thank you all for watching and we'll see you next time. God bless you. Bye.
Bye, guys.